joining us today for We Know Their Names, a virtual Srebrenica commemoration. My name is Ida Sefer, and I'm the president of the Bosnian American Genocide Institute and Education Center. We have gathered virtually today to honor the victims and survivors of the genocide in Srebrenica that occurred in 1995 from July 11th through July 22nd. 8,372 Bosnian Muslims, primarily men and boys, were executed in the Srebrenica region of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And today, July 11th, we recognize this day as a day of mourning as we commemorate the Srebrenica genocide. To fully contextualize the story of the Srebrenica genocide, we must look back to the spring of 1992, when the war and genocide began in Bosnia and Herzegovina. After the death of Yugoslavia's primary leader, Josip Broz Tito, Islamophobic ethno-nationalism spread throughout Yugoslavia for well over a decade before the citizens declared independence. As Slovenia and Croatia declared independence, the leadership and weaponry of the Yugoslav National Army became centralized in Serbia. The Islamophobic rhetoric and warmongering concerned many residents of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which led to a push for sovereignty in 1991. However, after a lack of recognition by the European Economic Community, the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina held a referendum for independence from the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in spring of 1992 to validate the population's need for independence. With a voter turnout larger than 60%, 99.7% of voters agreed to an independent Bosnia and Herzegovina. The population of Bosnia and Herzegovina historically was very diverse in ethnic and religious composition. Out of the 4 million residents, Muslim Bosnians, often referred to as Bosniaks, made up about 44% of the population, in comparison to 31% of Christian Orthodox Serbs and 17% of Catholic Croats who were also residents in Bosnia. On April 6, 1992, the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina received recognition from the European Economic Community and the United States as an independent nation. The creation of an independent Bosnian nation that would have Bosnian Muslims, Bosniaks, essentially as the majority, was opposed by many Bosnian Serbs, who launched a military campaign with the support of Serbia and of the Yugoslav National Army. The primary goal was to secure the coveted territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to murder, expel, and terrorize the Muslim civilian population through organized concentration camps, extermination campaigns, physical and emotional sexual torture, which included sexual assault, sexual enslavement, and forced birthing. What began with the shelling of Sarajevo on April 6th, 1992, spread throughout the country, and that terror was localized by the Serb militia from large cities that faced shelling and sniper fire to smaller villages that were facing absolute annihilation. After 3 years of occupation and being designated a safe zone by the United Nations in 1993, Srebrenica was overrun in July of 1995 by Bosnian Serb forces who were led by General Ratko Mladic. With no resistance from UN peacekeepers, the Bosnian Serb militia began to systematically separate families and communities by separating the Bosniak men and boys from the women and girls. The men and boys were rounded up and taken to various execution sites, where they were killed en masse and buried in 94 different mass graves. Some women and girls were taken to never be seen again, while others were sexually assaulted. Young children and the elderly were not exempt from this violence, as the youngest victim, Fatima Muhic, was less than a day old when she died, while Saha Izmirlic was 94 years old when she died. According to the International Commission on Missing Persons, 563 children and 60 women were murdered in Srebrenica. The international community, represented by the United Nations peacekeeping forces, failed to protect the 8,373 men, women, children, and the elderly from being brutally murdered, all while the victims were misled into believing that they would receive protection in the event of an ambush. The aftermath of the Srebrenica genocide left deep scars in Bosnia and Herzegovina. According to the International Commission of Missing Persons, of the 8,373 who were murdered in Srebrenica, 7,017 have been identified, while there are still over 1,000 missing. The genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina as a whole displaced 2 million people and ended the lives of 100,000 people, 80% of whom were Muslims. Between 20 and 60,000 women were sexually assaulted. Over 30,000 people, including men, women, children, and the elderly, were imprisoned in concentration camps. With the courageous testimony of survivors, some who still face threats of violence and discrimination in Bosnia, efforts towards justice were primarily executed through the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, known as the ICTY, and the International Court of Justice, as they both were able to recognize what happened in Srebrenica as a genocide. Genocide in Srebrenica was a deliberate and systematic attempt to annihilate a specific population based on their ethnic and religious identity. It represented a gross violation of human rights, including the right to life, liberty, and security of individuals. While accountability has been the primary hurdle for reconciliation, the annual commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide stands as a solemn occasion to remember and mourn the victims and stand in solidarity with victims and survivors. The commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide on July 11th holds profound significance not only for the victims and their families, but also for other victims of the genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today, you will hear from dozens of volunteers from around the world who have taken time to read the names of 8,373 Srebrenica genocide victims. While you may not know these names personally, we want you to take the time to listen and or read the names being recited. You may hear the same name twice or multiple times, and it's not an error. You may hear the same age and name of a victim, and it's not an error either. All those individuals died in Srebrenica. The genocide in Bosnia serves as a stark reminder of the horrors of war and the devastating consequences of ethnic hatred. July 11th is vital in preserving the historical record and countering denial and revisionism. By remembering and documenting the atrocities committed during the Srebrenica genocide, we can confront the past and reject any attempts to distort or deny the truth. It stands as a collective commitment to truth-telling, justice, and accountability. And for the first truth that must be spoken is the name. And with our program today, we will know all 8,373 of their names.
My name is Naida Sobo. Today I will be reading 100 names of the victims who were murdered in the genocide in Srebrenica. Muharrem Suljic, 18 years old. Meva Tabakovic, 40 years old. Murat Tabakovic, 58 years old. Shachir Suljic, 55 years old. Izo Tabakovic, 41 years old. Sulejman Suljic, 38 years old. Sulejman Suljicic, 18 years old. Shevko Tabakovic, 54 years old. Sulejman Suljic, 40 years old. Ismet Sulkanovic, 48 years old. Safet Suljic, 16 years old. Ismet Tabakovic, 45 years old. Mujo Suljic, 17 years old. Selim Tabakovic, 61 years old. Nejad Suljic, 22 years old. Zuhdo Suljic, 72 years old. Suad Suljic, 17 years old. Vahdet Suljic, 27 years old. Sulejman Suljic, 25 years old. Hajro Tabakovic, 57 years old. Mirzet Sulic, 19 years old. Hazim Tabakovic, 16 years old. Senahid Sulic, 26 years old. Esad Sulcic, 41 years old. Jakub Sušić, 32 years old. Ramo Sulic, 29 years old. Mirsad Tabakovic, 30 years old. Salim Tabakovic, 20 years old. Munib Sulic, 56 years old. Ramo Sulic, 35 years old. Murat Sulicic, 67 years old. Ibrahim Tabakovic, 40 years old. Refik Sulic, 27 years old. Ahmo Tabakovic, 56 years old. Besim Tabakovic, 26 years old. Mujo Sulic, 40 years old. Nesib Sulic, 24 years old. Muhammad Tabakovic, 19 years old. Rejo Sulic, 50 years old. Zajko Tabakovic, 48 years old. Muhammad Tabakovic, 40 years old. Elvir Tabakovic, 20 years old. Mehmed Sulkanovic, 34 years old. Enver Tahic, 19 years old. Selmoš Sulic, 37 years old. Recep Sulic, 24 years old. Haris Tabakovic, 20 years old. Sabit Sulic, 21 years old. Sead Tabakovic, 21 years old. Nejad Sulic, 28 years old. Haris Tabakovic, 18 years old. Nazif Sulic, 73 years old. Reshid Sulic, 25 years old. Munib Sulic, 67 years old. Nusret Sulic, 30 years old. Shemso Sulic, 44 years old. Omer Sulic, 64 years old. Hamid Tahic, 48 years old. Hasan Tabakovic, 46 years old. Rifet Tabakovic, 29 years old. Munib Tainjic, 56 years old. Nazif Sulic, 23 years old. Hamid Tabakovic, 48 years old. Sadid Sulic, 16 years old. Sheval Tabakovic, 28 years old. Sadik Tabakovic, 20 years old. Hamid Tabakovic, 28 years old. Shemso Tabakovic, 61 years old. Senahid Tabakovic, 22 years old. Mujo Sulic, 30 years old. Hamid Sushic, unknown age at death. Sabit Sulic, 21 years old. Suljo Tabakovic, 60 years old. Teufik Sulic, 29 years old. Sulejman Sušić, 21 years old. Nazif Sulic, 84 years old. Fajko Tabakovic, 33 years old. Ahmet Talovic, 36 years old. Shaban Sulic, 33 years old. Akif Tainjic, 58 years old. Smile Tabakovic, 31 years old. Ragib Sulic, 57 years old. Salko Sulic, 50 years old. Ahmo Tabakovic, 56 years old. Ramiz Sulic, 23 years old. Ohran Sulic, 57 years old. Nejib Tabakovic, 47 years old. Smile Sulic, 32 years old. Saib Sulic, 26 years old. Nazif Sulic, 63 years old. Vahid Sulic, 19 years old. Ibrahim Tabakovic, 43 years old. Cemal Tainjic, 69 years old. Vahdet Sulic, 28 years old. Suad Sulic, 23 years old. Sakib Sulic, 31 years old. Abdullah Tabakovic, 41 years old. Salih Sulic, 61 years old. Safet Sulic, 30 years old. Ramiz Tabakovic, 41 years old.
My name is Aika Suljevic. Today I will be reading the names of 100 victims who were murdered during the genocide in Srebrenica. Amira Talovic, unknown age at death. Eyüp Talovic, 23 years old. Ensa Talovic, 18 years old. Hashim Talovic, 63 years old. Hussein Talovic, unknown age at death. Ibrahim Talovic, 58 years old. Ismail Talovic, 17 years old. Ismet Talovic, unknown age at death. Mirnes Talovic, 17 years old. Mustafa Talovic, 42 years old. Mustafa Talovic, 60 years old. Rahman Talovic, 33 years old. Rahman Talovic, 50 years old. Salim Talovic, 56 years old. Sead Talovic, unknown age at death. Abdullah Tepic, 54 years old. Ahmed Tepic, 43 years old. Asim Tepic, 52 years old. Javad Tepic, 29 years old. Faruk Tepic, 20 years old. Ismet Tepic, 66 years old. Yusuf Tepic, 57 years old. Zaim Tepic, 73 years old. Jemail Teskerejic, 53 years old. Ahmad Tihic, 40 years old. Ahmad Tihic, 45 years old. Bego Tihic, 35 years old. Bekir Tihic, 41 years old. Jamil Tihic, 50 years old. Jama Tihic, 32 years old. Javad Tihic, 23 years old. Elzir Tihic, 21 years old. Enver Tihic, 30 years old. Esed Tihic, 31 years old. Fahrudin Tihic, 23 years old. Hayrudin Tihic, 20 years old. Hakia Tihic, 56 years old. Hamed Tihic, 67 years old. Hamid Tihic, 64 years old. Hazim Tihic, 23 years old. Hamed Tihic, 58 years old. Ismet Tihic, 40 years old. Yahia Tihic, 54 years old. Yasmin Tihic, 19 years old. Mustafa Tihic, 28 years old. Safet Tihic, 43 years old. Sead Tihic, 23 years old. Shukriya Tihic, 48 years old. Vahi Tihic, 26 years old. Vekaz Tihic, 20 years old. Zahir Tihic, 56 years old. Asim Topalic, 36 years old. Amir Topčić, 34 years old. Edhem Torlak, 50 years old. Shaban Torlakovic, 59 years old. Mehmet Tupkovic, 66 years old. Adem Turkovic, 43 years old. Admin Turkovic, 14 years old. Ahmet Turkovic, 46 years old. Aliya Turkovic, 34 years old. Bayro Turkovic, 22 years old. Chamil Turkovic, 38 years old. Hajo Turkovic, 35 years old. Hashim Turkovic, 19 years old. Hurem Turkovic, 47 years old. Husniya Turkovic, 30 years old. Ibish Turkovic, 36 years old. Kasim Turkovic, 45 years old. Mahmud Turkovic, 50 years old. Mehmedaliya Turkovic, 48 years old. Muyo Turkovic, 37 years old. Mustafa Turkovic, 44 years old. Necip Turkovic, 18 years old. Nusret Turkovic, 46 years old. Osman Turkovic, 28 years old. Ismet Turnajic, 33 years old. Rejo Turnajic, 58 years old. Zuhdiya Turnajic, 43 years old. Adil Tursunovic, 40 years old. Almaz Tursunovic, 21 years old. Daud Tursunovic, 50 years old. Faruk Tursunovic, 34 years old. Hayrudin Tursunovic, 50 years old. Yusuf Tursunovic, 60 years old. Mensur Tursunovic, 54 years old. Muyo Tursunovic, 27 years old. Muris Tursunovic, 20 years old. Shahin Tursunovic, 49 years old. Senad Tursunovic, 16 years old. Hayrudin Tutunjic, 19 years old. Fadil Tuzlic, 24 years old. Alia Udovcic, 70 years old. Mujo Udovcic, 57 years old. Halid Uvalic, 33 years old. Ibrahim Uvalic, 43 years old. Mensur Uvalic, 18 years old. Senahid Uvalic, 21 years old. Smail Uvalic, 46 years old. Amil Uzunovic, 52 years old. Bahrudin Uzunovic, 23 years old.
My name is Azra Jakupovic. Today I will be reading the names of 100 victims who were murdered during the genocide in Srebrenica. Dahmo Uzunovic, 25 years old. Edhem Uzunovic, 35 years old. Ekrem Uzunovic, 28 years old. Halid Uzunovic, 54 years old. Recep Uzunovic, 42 years old. Zena Uzunovic, 57 years old. Salih Valjevac, 68 years old. Asim Varnica, 36 years old. Aziz Varnica, 43 years old. Ibro Varnica, 46 years old. Mehmed Varnica, 14 years old. Mensur Varnica, 24 years old. Nasib Varnica, 21 years old. Sadik Varnica, 16 years old. Samir Varnica, 20 years old. Alia Vezovic, 56 years old. Alia Vezovic, unknown age of death. Bayro Vezovic, 55 years old. Fikret Vezovic, 29 years old. Hayro Vezovic, 60 years old. Hakia Vezovic, 27 years old. Ibrahim Vezovic, 67 years old. Ismet Vezovic, 43 years old. Merced Vezovic, 31 years old. Mujo Vezovic, unknown age at death. Ramiz Vezovic, 40 years old. Sadudin Vezovic, 42 years old. Safet Vezovic, 28 years old. Salko Vezovic, 56 years old. Suljo Vezovic, 46 years old. Zainil Vezovic, 55 years old. Abdulkadir Velic, 20 years old. Adem Velic, 35 years old. Aisha Velic, 78 years old. Alia Velic, 25 years old. Alia Velic, unknown age of death. Becho Velic, 56 years old. Khalid Velic, 20 years old. Hassan Velic, 37 years old. Mehmed Velic, 51 years old. Mehmedalia Velic, 43 years old. Meho Velic, 40 years old. Muriz Velic, 19 years old. Osman Velic, unknown age of death. Shaban Velic, 54 years old. Shachir Velic, 32 years old. Zainil Velic, 34 years old. Dika Verlashevic, unknown age of death. Mustafa Verlashevic, 58 years old. Shevko Verlashevic, 72 years old. Nazif Velic, 80 years old. Edhem Vrankovina, 41 years old. Emina Vrankovina, unknown age of death. Emir Vrankovina, 28 years old. Erziz Vrankovina, 19 years old. Fehim Vrankovina, 48 years old. Mehmed Vrankovina, 57 years old. Nail Vrankovina, 23 years old. Ramiz Vrankovina, 52 years old. Ramiz Vrankovina, 59 years old. Samir Vrankovina, 20 years old. Semir Vrankovina, 23 years old. Shavket Vrankovina, 33 years old. Meho Zahic, 57 years old. Arif Zahirovic, 57 years old. Beris Zahirovic, 32 years old. Hakia Zahirovic, 53 years old. Ibrahim Zahirovic, 63 years old. Idris Zahirovic, 36 years old. Muradif Zahirovic, 36 years old. Muriz Zahirovic, 29 years old. Shaban Zahirovic, 23 years old. Hamed Jdero, 71 years old. Yusuf Jdero, 47 years old. Rashid Jdero, 31 years old. Rejo Jdero, 40 years old. Adis Zainilovic, 23 years old. Hasib Zainilovic, unknown age of death. Hidayat Zainilovic, 49 years old. Ibrahim Zainilovic, 36 years old. Muhammad Zainilovic, 28 years old. Nusret Zekic, 31 years old. Ekrem Zemirlic, 33 years old. Mirsad Zemunovic, 40 years old. Emil Žigic, 32 years old. Fadil Žigic, 30 years old. Abdullah Ziljic, 21 years old. Avdo Ziljic, 47 years old. Ekrem Ziljic, 33 years old. Kada Ziljic, unknown age of death. Sadidin Ziljic, unknown age of death. Safed Ziljic, 25 years old. Shamso Ziljic, 61 years old. Teufik Ziljic, 36 years old. Suhriya Ziljic, 28 years old. Hamid Zilic, 47 years old. Hamid Zilic, 47 years old. Azem Zimic, 56 years old. Daud Zimic, unknown age of death. Enver Zimic, 25 years old.
My name is Adisa Mujevic, and I will be reading 73 names of the people who were murdered during the genocide in Srebrenica. Ibro Zimic, 52 years old. Mithat Zimic, 22 years old. Nusret Zimic, 34 years old. Ramo Zimic, 62 years old. Salih Zimic, 33 years old. Sidalia Zimic, 36 years old. Alia Jival, 64 years old. Abid Zuhric, 34 years old. Adam Zuhric, 37 years old. Avdo Zuhric, 30 years old. Bego Zuhric, 28 years old. Eyub Zuhric, 59 years old. Esad Zuhric, 22 years old. Hayra Zuhric, 33 years old. Halil Zuhric, 32 years old. Ismet Zuhric, 61 years old. Muhammad Zuhric, 24 years old. Muya Zuhric, 32 years old. Naziv Zuhric, 26 years old. Nermin Zuhric, 17 years old. Nezir Zuhric, 19 years old. Nurko Zuhric, 41 years old. Amir Zukanovic, 26 years old. Avdia Zukanovic, 55 years old. Fadil Zukanovic, 37 years old. Hayro Zukanovic, 35 years old. Hayrudin Zukanovic, 39 years old. Hamed Zukanovic, 32 years old. Hassan Zukanovic, 48 years old. Hussein Zukanovic, 56 years old. Ibrahim Zukanovic, 54 years old. Ibrahim Zukanovic, 64 years old. Ismet Zukanovic, 56 years old. Yuso Zukanovic, 34 years old. Mirsad Zukanovic, 20 years old. Ramo Zukanovic, 27 years old. Sabahuddin Zukanovic, 15 years old. Sadik Zukanovic, 27 years old. Salchin Zukanovic, 58 years old. Sead Zukanovic, 18 years old. Sefer Zukanovic, 23 years old. Selim Zukanovic, 60 years old. Smail Zukanovic, 54 years old. Suad Zukanovic, 22 years old. Suljo Zukanovic, 17 years old. Alaga Zukic, 35 years old. Alia Zukic, 49 years old. Alia Zukic, 54 years old. Azem Zukic, 34 years old. Javad Zukic, 25 years old. Fahrudin Zukic, 19 years old. Fahrudin Zukic, 20 years old. Fikret Zukic, 33 years old. Hayrudin Zukic, 37 years old. Hussein Zukic, 63 years old. Hussein Zukic, 66 years old. Ibrahim Zukic, 47 years old. Izzat Zukic, 29 years old. Yasmin Zukic, 17 years old. Yusuf Zukic, 49 years old. Mehmed Zukic, 63 years old. Mansur Zukic, 17 years old. Mustafa Zukic, 54 years old. Ramo Zukic, 45 years old. Refik Zukic, 34 years old. Shefik Zukic, 15 years old. Shamso Zukic, 36 years old. Senad Zukic, 15 years old. Senahid Zukic, 27 years old. Sursib Zukic, 40 years old. Velaga Zukic, 39 years old. Zuriet Zukic, 26 years old. Mujo Zulanovic, 42 years old.